Hi, if you're new here, my name is Nisha, and today I'm talking about IBS, or irritable bowel syndrome. I know this can be an uncomfortable topic for a lot of people. For some of us, it's a daily battle with our digestive systems, and for others, it's dealing with the occasional but severe flare-up when we're really stressed. Whatever your experience is, today I'm sharing tips for healing your IBS and vegan meal ideas that are IBS friendly. I have IBS, like millions of other people, including possibly yourself. And while my symptoms have ebbed and flowed over the last 10 years, they have definitely gotten so much better since I became vegan a few years ago. But my body's not perfect, so I do still have symptoms from time to time. And these strategies in this video, as well as the meal ideas, have helped me feel better when I have those symptoms. So I hope they can help you as well. One of the major triggers for IBS symptoms is stress. I know that firsthand because I first developed IBS about 10 years ago when I was studying for my first semester of law school finals, and yes, I was a little more than stressed. But snapping out of a stressed out phase can be difficult. So here are some techniques that I use to help ease the stress, and I hope they can help you as well. One of these strategies is meditation. And if the idea of sitting silently and thinking about nothing sounds overwhelming or boring, then don't worry, because meditation is actually quite the opposite. It asks you to be fully present and to just experience everything that you're feeling and you're thinking, whether it's your stomach growling or your heart beating really quickly. I noticed that after just a few days of regular meditation, even if it's just for 5 minutes every morning, really reduces my overall anxiety levels and helps me feel a lot calmer. If the idea of a formal meditation sounds boring or something you're not interested in, you can still incorporate meditation into your life in other ways. I really like to enjoy a meditative cup of tea. I take the time to prepare a really nice cup of tea, and then I go find somewhere quiet to enjoy it. Before I drink the tea, I inhale the aroma, I observe the quality and color of the tea, and I give thanks to the cup of tea in front of me. And when I do drink the tea, I savor each sip, really focusing on what it feels like to have the warm liquid against my mouth as it goes down my throat and finally settles into my belly. Taking this time to enjoy the tea for myself and to be fully present with the tea is an easy but effective way that helps me feel a lot less stressed, and I really encourage you to try it out. Another instant de-stressor for me is to spend a little time outside in nature. Being in nature reminds me that there's a whole entire world outside of whatever's going on in my head at the moment. And that gives me perspective, which instantly makes me feel calmer. Even if you live in a big city like I do in New York City, you can always find a little patch of greenery or even some indoor houseplants that will make you feel instantly happier. One of the strategies that has really helped my IBS symptoms is taking a daily probiotic supplement. Of course, I also recommend eating a diet that's rich in probiotic foods, such as fermented foods, and I have a whole video on vegan foods that are rich in probiotics. But when our digestive systems are in distress, sometimes our bodies really need a highly concentrated source of probiotics taken on a regular basis. I also find that when I take a regular probiotic, I'm more regular in my movements, so there's also an added benefit. But if you are vegan, you do want to make sure that you read the labels on the probiotic supplements you buy, because a lot of probiotics are derived from dairy, so they're not vegan. I've included a few links to vegan probiotic supplements in the description box below if you're interested. For some people, specific foods can trigger IBS symptoms. For me, before becoming vegan, it was dairy products, specifically ice cream, which I loved. And it's no surprise because I'm highly lactose intolerant. If you want to know which foods trigger your symptoms, I recommend keeping a food diary for at least a week. Write down everything you eat, every meal, every snack, every nibble, and write down the time at which you ate it. And also record any symptoms you have throughout the day, including the time as well. After a few days, you'll be able to start identifying foods that trigger the symptoms, and you can gradually eliminate them from your diet and see how you feel. Now, if you're wondering, what if my trigger food is chocolate? And chocolate happens to be my favorite food. Am I supposed to just live my entire life without it? No, you don't have to do that. Once you've eliminated the triggering food or foods from your diet after a few weeks, you can experiment with gradually incorporating them back into your diet one by one. And you might learn something about your body. It might be that chocolate triggers your symptoms, but only if it's milk chocolate, or only when you're really stressed out, or only when you're on your monthly cycle. So you can still enjoy your favorite foods, but be smart about it. One of the reasons you might be experiencing IBS symptoms is that you're not eating enough dietary fiber. Fiber is what keeps our digestive tracts in regular working order, but unfortunately, most Americans do not eat enough fiber on a daily basis. One thing to keep in mind is that the type of fiber you might need to add to your diet may depend on the type of IBS symptoms you have. There are two types of fiber, soluble fiber and insoluble fiber. Soluble fiber slows things down in your digestive tract, so it's a great solution to your diet if you experience everyone's favorite word, diarrhea. Sorry. My favorite sources of soluble fiber are oats, butternut squash, and chia seeds. Insoluble fiber, which is found in vegetables, legumes, and beans, and whole grains, helps to quicken things up in the digestive tract, so it is a great addition to your diet if you are constipated. In either case, if you currently aren't eating a lot of fiber, I recommend to add the fiber into your diet gradually and slowly. Because if you're eating like 15 grams right now, and then you suddenly go up to 45 grams of fiber per day, you're going to have a hard time adapting, and you're probably going to have a lot of gas and bloating and cramping, which is obviously what you want to avoid in the first place. My final tip for healing your IBS is to experiment with a low FODMAP diet. FODMAPs is an acronym for 4 types of short-chain carbohydrates that are too long to pronounce in this video, but you can Google it afterwards. And these carbohydrates are found in all kinds of foods, including a lot of nutritious foods. But they can make those foods harder to digest, which then causes those uncomfortable symptoms like gas and bloating and worse. A typical low FODMAP diet will eliminate all high FODMAP foods for a certain period of time, and then you gradually reintroduce these categories of foods one by one. There are tons of resources on the internet about low FODMAP diets and which foods to eat and which to avoid, and I've included a few resources in the description box below. But a lot of these diets call for meat and eggs, which are low in FODMAPs, so I wanted to give you some vegan low FODMAP meal ideas, and the full instructions for all of these recipes can be found on my blog, which is linked below. First, let's talk about breakfast, because there are certain things you might need to adjust in your diet. There are a fair number of fruits, as well as most wheat-containing grains that are high in FODMAPs. So you'll want to swap out apples and mangoes, for instance, which are high in FODMAPs, with berries and certain citrus fruits, which are low in FODMAPs. And you can easily replace wheat-containing grains with oats, quinoa, millet, and other types of pseudo-grains that don't contain gluten. Now for some lunch and dinner ideas. First, I'm making a tempeh rice bowl. Tempeh is made from fermented soybeans and is a low FODMAP food, but certain other soy products, including soybeans and soy milk, are high in FODMAPs. The science behind the difference is a little confusing, but just keep in mind that tempeh and firm varieties of tofu are low in FODMAPs and good for an IBS diet. For this tempeh rice bowl, start by marinating the tempeh. This marinade is packed with delicious, flavorful ingredients that I am sure you will love. I do steam the tempeh for about 10 minutes before marinating because it helps remove some of the characteristic bitter taste. You'll marinate the tempeh pieces for 2 hours or up to overnight. And after marinating the tempeh, you'll bake it in the oven at 375 degrees Fahrenheit for 12 to 15 minutes. Now for the veggie slaw in this rice bowl. I'm using a combination of low FODMAP vegetables, but if you want to customize it to your taste or whatever you have on hand, be sure to consult a low FODMAP food list, and you can find one of those in the description box below. To dress the slaw, I made a tahini sesame dressing that really complements the flavors of the tempeh marinade. And for an extra crunch factor, I'm finishing it with a small handful of sesame seeds and sunflower seeds. Seeds are a great low FODMAP food, but you just don't want to overdo it. To serve, mix together some cooked brown rice with a vegetable slaw and serve the tempeh on top. This final dish is for a stuffed acorn squash. Luckily, most types of winter squash are low in FODMAPs, and this one makes a really satisfying dinner. You'll start by slicing an acorn squash in half. This can be a bit difficult, so I've included a link in the description box below on how to easily and safely cut an acorn squash. To impart some flavor and get the squash nice and browned, I've brushed the flesh of the squash with olive oil, along with salt, pepper, and fresh thyme. You'll bake the squash in the oven, flesh side down, for 40 minutes or until tender. For the stuffing, I'm using a base of quinoa, which is low in FODMAPs, and for a bit more protein, I'm using some canned brown lentils. Most legumes are actually high in FODMAPs, but following a low FODMAP diet doesn't mean that you can't ever have any legumes. Certain legumes, such as lentils, are lower in FODMAPs than others, such as kidney beans, which are really high in FODMAPs. And you can have these lower FODMAP legumes in small quantities, like a quarter cup. Also, canned lentils and beans have lower FODMAP values than the dried and cooked variety. To flavor the quinoa and lentils, I'm adding some low FODMAP ingredients, including olives, pine nuts, spices, herbs, lemon juice, and tahini. Alright, those are my tips for healing IBS and vegan low FODMAP meal ideas. If you enjoyed the video or found it useful, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, as well as hitting that like button. And if you have IBS and certain strategies have worked for you, please leave me a comment below to let me know what they are. I'm sure other people would appreciate it as well. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.